words does not translate into reality. And no matter how bellicose the rhetoric is out of Brussels and Paris and London, the reality is that the European armies cannot muster sufficient forces and sustain them logistically to have any meaningful impact. But what they are doing, and I think this will play into what we'll be talking about later, is tying up Donald Trump's hands. Because by bringing up this language and seeking to detach themselves from the United States, they're calling his bluff. Donald Trump has been, saying, "Oh, well, NATO's not essential to us. We could withdraw from NATO. We could do this." But Europeans are calling his bluff, saying, "Okay, let's start talking about a world without America in NATO." And while the long-term objective of the Trump administration may be to disentangle ourselves from NATO, in the short term, if we divorce ourselves from NATO, we can't control, the direction or the tenor of what Europe does in the future. So they've called Trump's bluff. This was one of the reasons why he is, downshifted on moving forward with a peace plan with Russia, because Europe is complicated. Trump didn't have a plan B to deal with this. So no, but Europe's not going to go to war. They don't think they could. What they're doing is muddying the waters for Donald Trump's prospects of peace with Russia.
Just when you thought the global stage couldn't get any more chaotic, we now turn our attention to two massive developments that are shaking the world. First, Donald Trump has launched a full-blown economic war, slapping tariffs on key global players in what he calls a declaration of economic independence. This move is poised to change the global economy overnight, pushing allies and adversaries alike into uncharted territory. Meanwhile, on the battlefields of Ukraine, Russian forces have claimed control over the critical village of Vesela, a move that could have serious implications for the ongoing war. These two seemingly separate events are, in reality, deeply intertwined. Economic warfare fuels real warfare, and the consequences of both will be felt far and wide. Let's break it all down. In an explosive announcement, Donald Trump has declared what can only be described as a trade war against much of the world. Standing at the podium, he signed a historic order imposing massive tariffs on multiple countries, stating that trillions and trillions of dollars in tariff revenue would now go toward lowering taxes and paying off the U.S. national debt. But make no mistake, this is not just about balancing the books. It's a power move, a direct challenge to the international economic order, and a stark declaration that America will no longer sit idly by while other nations benefit from its market. Trump made it crystal clear the United States is done playing the role of the global piggy bank. His tariffs target Europe with a crushing 20% duty, while China, Japan, South Korea, and Switzerland are hit with even higher rates, ranging from 24% to a staggering 34%. And yet, conspicuously absent from the list are two nations, Russia and Belarus. Why? Because while much of the world is being forced to pay the price, Trump is drawing clear economic battle lines, choosing which countries will suffer and which will benefit from his new order. The timing of this decision is no coincidence. The U.S. Senate is actively debating raising the debt ceiling by a staggering $5 trillion, a clear sign that America's financial situation is becoming untenable. And while the Biden administration had opted for incremental economic strategies, Trump has chosen a full-scale assault. By imposing tariffs, he is essentially forcing Europe, China, and other economic powerhouses to fund America's next moves. But what moves are those? The answer may lie in the looming specter of war. Behind the scenes, tensions with Iran are escalating at breakneck speed. The U.S. military is actively increasing its presence in the Middle East, deploying bombers and additional carrier strike groups to the region. French Foreign Minister Stéphane Séjourné has warned that war with Iran is almost inevitable unless a nuclear deal is concluded soon. Meanwhile, Trump himself has declared that Iran will be finished by September if it refuses to comply with nuclear disarmament demands. But war, especially one of this scale, requires an enormous amount of money. This is where the tariffs come in. If Trump is preparing for a large-scale military confrontation with Iran, he needs funding. And what better way to generate cash than by making foreign nations foot the bill? These tariffs aren't just about trade fairness. They're a war tax, a means of extracting money from Europe, China, and others to fuel a potential military conflict that could be the most expensive war since the 20th century. And yet, while the West is being financially squeezed, one country stands to benefit: Russia. While the world was focused on Trump's economic blitz, the situation on the Ukrainian front took a grim turn. Russian forces have captured the village of Vesely, a strategically vital area that could significantly impact the broader war effort. Over the past 12 hours, Russian troops launched a relentless offensive, using heavy artillery bombardments, drone strikes, and missile attacks to weaken Ukrainian defenses. Reports from the front lines indicate that Ukrainian troops were forced to withdraw under overwhelming fire, leaving behind key positions and supply routes. Several pro-Russian sources claim that captured Ukrainian soldiers were seen surrendering from bunkers, solidifying Moscow's grip over the area. Meanwhile, Ukrainian sources insist that their forces are still putting up resistance and that certain pockets of the village remain contested. But with Russian forces now in control of key roads and tactical high ground, the loss of Vesely marks a dangerous shift for Ukraine. So why does this matter? Vesely's capture tightens Russia's grip on eastern Ukraine, making it harder for Ukrainian forces to launch counteroffensives. If Moscow can consolidate control over this area, it could pave the way for further advances, bringing Russia closer to securing key supply lines and pushing deeper into Ukrainian territory. It's impossible to ignore the eerie alignment of Trump's economic war and Russia's military gains. Trump's tariffs will hit America's allies the hardest, weakening their economies at a time when they are already struggling to support Ukraine. Meanwhile, Russia and Belarus remain untouched by these new economic penalties, further fueling speculation about Trump's long-term intentions. By shielding Russia from tariffs while slamming Europe with financial penalties, Trump is effectively weakening Ukraine's biggest supporters, the European nations that have been bankrolling much of Kiev's war effort. Could this be an intentional strategy to force Ukraine into a more precarious position? At the same time, if Trump's tariffs are indeed a means to prepare for war with Iran, then Russia may have just gained a massive strategic advantage. A U.S.-Iran conflict would draw American resources away from Ukraine, allowing Russia to press its advantage while the world's attention shifts elsewhere. The world is now at a dangerous crossroads. Trump's tariffs have ignited an economic firestorm, reshaping global alliances and forcing countries to pick sides. Will Europe retaliate with its own tariffs? Will China escalate tensions in the Pacific? And if a war with Iran does break out, how will it affect the already fragile balance of power? Meanwhile, on the battlefield, Ukraine faces an increasingly dire situation as Russia continues to make territorial gains. With Vesely now under Russian control, the front lines are shifting, and every inch of lost ground makes Ukraine's struggle for survival that much harder. One thing is certain: the next few months will be a defining moment in modern history. Will the world plunge further into economic and military chaos? Or is there still time to pull back from the edge? Only time will tell.